If North Dakota can do this, this would be fantastic. It would get national attention, it would set a standard, and this could sweep the country. It could revolutionize the country if this idea could come about where property shouldn't be taxed at all.
Well, one of the things about Measure 2, and the primary purpose of Measure 2, has nothing to do with lowering taxes or any of these types of things. It has to do with stimulating private economy and economic growth, together with the most important thing, we're a free country, we're a free society, we're a free people. And the essence of freedom is property rights. It always has been. That's what we fought a revolution about. It was property rights. That's what it boiled down to.
Well, when there's a property tax, you don't truly own your property. You pay rent to the government every year. And, how can we say that? If you don't pay your taxes, they're going to come and take it.
What is freedom if we don't have security in our homes, security for our families? This is what Measure 2 is about. The United States is in a position, and should always be in the position, to lead the world, showing the citizens are the first thing that comes to light. It's the only purpose of government is to facilitate and make us secure, make us better off. Today, that's reversed when it comes to property taxes.
Well, our governments have been growing by leaps and bounds, and the intrusion, onto our properties. But when governments get big, they intrude on our property. They only can do it at the expense of personal liberty, and that is why this taxation is so bad.
We just want people to understand that it's really simple. Either you own your property or you don't. We can talk about the economics of it. We can talk about all the ins and outs, the details of the mills and the valuations and credits and so forth. But the bottom line is, do we want to own our property? Do we feel that this is ours to control and use as we see fit?
It's an attack on the property ownership. It means that you really don't own your property. It means that you have to pay rent to the government. And then if you want to use your property, you have to get permission from your government. So in a free society, you have your right to your life. You have your right to your liberty. You should have the right to all the fruits of your labor.
But the problem with property taxes is when times get tough and government wants more, they raise those. And despite the situation we're in financially, our family budget has to suffer, so government does not. That's turned democracy and freedom on its head. That's what Measure 2 is all about. Abolishing government first and putting citizens and families first.
If North Dakota would pass this would be big news, and it would set a standard. You might have to worry about a lot of people moving here. I mean, you have to be concerned about that, but that would be good. People would come and it would even further boost your economy.
What keeps young people in North Dakota are jobs, good careers, good jobs, and Measure 2 will improve those options for them because it'll diversify our economy. Manufacturing will move in, all sorts of different businesses that aren't related to agriculture or oil or energy or anything like that will move into North Dakota, and young people will really have the opportunity to stay and raise their families here.
What we want to do, and one of the side benefits besides giving us security in our homes, is all of a sudden we're putting money back into the pockets of people who create a real economy. And that would be close to $750 million a year. That will stimulate economic development to diversify our economy in a way that has not been done anywhere in the United States of America. We will now have business and industry looking to come and locate here. Not only will we have agriculture and energy and gas and oil, we will have manufacturing and other industry as an option to creation of jobs in an economy so our kids can stay. People need to understand North Dakota's got the oldest average population in the nation. We've been losing population. The oil boom has helped artificially increase our population loss. But unless we do something about the basics here, our state is going to continue to go backwards. Abolishing property taxes will make us the most competitive piece of real estate on the face of the earth.
Taxes always affect investments, and whether it's an income tax or a property tax. When a business is thinking about coming into a state, they look at this and they go to low tax states. And if states would reject this notion of taxing property, I think it would be a tremendous boon, for the economy, because businesses would pay a lot more attention. There'd be a lot of economic growth.
Most aggressive entrepreneurs would hire more people. They'd expand their business, open new locations, make new manufacturing plants, that kind of thing. And they're going to spend some of it. They're going to buy another house. They're going to buy more cars. They're going to, again, go out to eat more and go to movies more and that type of stuff. So the economy is going to benefit from them spending a lot of that money. And if they save some of it, there's nothing wrong with saving either, because if they're true entrepreneurs, chances are when they save a bunch of money, they're going to go invest it somewhere else, and probably in an environment that is conducive to job creation, which North Dakota would be if there weren't any property taxes.
Well, when you put $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 back into the family budget and you let them control it, just imagine the kind of economic power that will unleash in our community. Those monies will be directed towards what the families really need to thrive and to do better. And again, this goes back to this idea of investment in our community. What will make our community strong? First of all, it'll be strong families. It'll be families who can pay for the private, for the music lessons, who can pay for the braces, who can get their children into a better college perhaps. And this is going to be good for the community, but it's good for the family. And really, the most local government is the family.
Well, when 30 or 40% of property isn't being taxed, they're still receiving the same services that everybody else receives. And so that means some people are paying for their services and some people are not. And because the costs are accumulated over everybody, and if only half of the people are paying those costs, that means that really their costs are probably about double what they should be.
And this gets to the essence of what's wrong with property taxes. It's an absolutely broken system. It's a system that's deceptive, deceives people, and hides what's really going on in terms of special interest privilege. What we have right now is 30 to 40% of the property in the state of North Dakota is exempt from property tax. What happens there is one person gets an exemption. Their exemption is put on the backs of everyone else, and special interests get the exemptions. One of the things North Dakota has attempted to do is have public economic development agencies. Well, a public economic development agency is the antithesis of our capitalistic system, the private economy. Once the government gets involved, it doesn't matter whether things make sense or not. They subsidize it by taking money out of the pockets of families and people who earn it.
There are so many that don't pay property tax. Not just the renters, but even the property owners themselves. In some areas, it's 35 to 50% of the properties aren't paying a tax. So when those who are dissatisfied with the rising tax, with this out-of-control tax, when they go to their local government and say, enough, we're in the minority. Because half of the people don't own property, and of those that do, half of them don't pay the tax. And so it's become a runaway train with no one at the brakes because everyone's enjoying the ride in the back.
We've got the Builders Association, the State Builders Association, local building entities are opposed to this. Now, why would that be? You'd think, gee, these guys, they use land. Well, what's happened is they've lobbied through the legislature, again, they're a special interest, special treatment, that when they go to sell their house, the buyer can have 2 years of $75,000 of the value of this new purchase exempt from property taxes. It gives them a tool to try to sell and compete with you who are trying to sell your used home. They don't want to lose this leg up. That's a special interest. That's what's going on, and it's going on across the board. Take a look at Renaissance zones or enterprise zones in your area. This is where a person's property is exempted from property tax for 2 years, 5 years, in some case 20 and 30 years. And in fact, in Mandan, just the end of January, they approved one entity exempt $39,000 a year in property tax for 5 years. That's $200,000. This property owner is not having to pay in tax. All of the competition to what he's doing with his property is having to pay that tax. These are the special interests. TIF financing, tax increment financing, is another one. If we abolish property taxes, everyone is on the same footing. Everybody benefits. There's no question these entities benefit.
Well, sure, the special interests love it when they can go to the legislature, carve out their own little nook, and then they themselves can prosper at the expense of everybody else. If you look at Renaissance zones and tax increment financing districts, all of those tax schemes benefit the special interests that spend a lot of time and a lot of money lobbying, and they hurt the regular person because that is just a tax shift. Because the local governments are not cutting their budgets when they give tax breaks out like that. They're keeping their budgets the same level, so that means that the pressure is put onto just your average homeowner.
It's absolute pure selfishness, but what they're doing is they're shifting the total cost onto your back. By abolishing property taxes across the board, everyone is on an equal footing, and in fact, we will have the economic benefits. Let's remember, when these exemptions are granted, they have to be granted by the state legislature. Again, there's no local control because of property taxes. The state legislature does it. But what do? When your political jurisdiction, your economic development agency, goes down to the state to sit in front of the Business and Industry Committee and lobby and ask for this exemption, they come in and say, gee, if you give us this exemption, what will happen is it will stimulate economic development in this little area here, and the economic development stimulated will more than make up for the exemption that you're going to be granting. They're absolutely right. If we do this on a statewide basis, that's what makes North Dakota a valuable piece of real estate. People are saying, gee, property taxes are locally controlled. That is a fiction. There's absolutely no local control to property taxes. The only thing local about property taxes is the property. The state itself tells the counties how they're going to value the property. And in fact, in agriculture, the state itself identifies the value of agricultural land. There is no local input and no local control. That's on the valuation side. On the assessment side, i.e. the mill levy side, the state itself tells the local jurisdictions what it can charge mills for, how many mills they must charge or cannot charge, how few mills they charge. It's totally controlled. In fact, if you go to the state property tax department, again, if we have local control, why do we have a state property tax department? That should make people wonder. There's a 27-page booklet in 6-point type identifying what can and can't be done. This is managed minusculely at the state level. There is no local control. In fact, the people listening to this should ask themselves, gee, how much control do I have over my property taxes? If anybody out there says, oh yeah, because it's locally controlled, I've got control over how much they're going to be, how my valuation is going to be, the mills that are going to be charged, I'd like to hear from them, because I haven't heard anybody that's had any control.
Well, right now, the way local control is defined is the state tells the local governments how much they can raise, how many mills they can assess for different purposes, and then the local governments collect that. The state tells the local governments how much to collect and what to spend it on. The local governments do their job. We want to switch that around. We want to say that the state is the tax collector because right now they have more than enough money coming into the state coffers. And instead of making the local governments be the collector, the state is, and then the local governments decide where that money is spent. Do they need to spend more on a police force? Do they need to spend more on better street lighting? Or perhaps they've had a bad year with snow removal and they need to do that more. Right now, your 2.5 mills is what you can spend on emergency snow removal. Once you've passed that, that's it. Now you have to turn to some other source for those kinds of services.
Measure 2 is a constitutional measure. We intended it to be that way. We intended it to be that way so that it would stop the legislature and special interests from manipulating our taxes, from raising them and spending them and hiding how that spending's going. In the measure, it states that the state shall pick up all of what's being paid for by property taxes as of the date they're eliminated. What that ends up doing is all of that money that gets picked up under the measure must be returned to the political subdivisions, the cities, counties, and other political subdivisions, diking districts, park districts, etc., with no strings attached. In other words, the expenditures of that will now lie directly with the legislative and governing bodies of those political subdivisions. That does not currently occur. All spending decisions are essentially controlled at the state level. What people are trying to deceive the public on is, gee, if we assess them on the property, somehow that gives us control. Assessment gives no control. The control is how you spend the money, and that's what Measure 2 gives us, the control over the expenditure. Think about it. Are you more concerned about where the money is coming from or about who controls how and for what it's spent on?
When this idea was first being tossed around about being a potential ballot measure, of course, when you start talking to people about it, they have lots of questions. You know, what does this do to local control? How are the services going to be funded? And all of those types of fundamental questions. And so we decided, a group of us said, let's put together a book. Let's put together a website that can be a resource for everyone to go and get answers, very specific and detailed answers to those questions.
Well, this actually didn't start out as abolishing property taxes. It started out because we were watching the state legislature session after session increasing state spending 19, 20, 26, 27%. I mean, spending was going through the ceiling because the state had the money coming in. Rather than reducing our taxes, they've phenomenally increased the size and scope of our state government. And people wanted to do something about that. Originally, we thought we need to put a spending cap on these people. Let's limit their spending to either the CPI or the growth in personal income. And as we got to talking about that, trying to do it, more and more people were upset about what was going on with their property taxes. Property taxes were going through the roof. Every year after year after year, while services didn't change, property taxes were going up 10, 15, 20, 30%. People said, we can't deal with this. People were forced out of their homes. People were forced to sell their homes. It's a misnomer thinking that the state, what they do is they confiscate your home and they sell it at the sheriff's sale. That's not what happens in most cases. Before your house goes to the sheriff's sale, people sell it so they don't lose it to the tax man. And this is forcing people out of their houses. People are refusing to improve their homes because every time they add the garage, they add another room, their taxes go up. It's stopping people from having a home that they want. So more and more people said, let's do something, let's do something. We started looking at how we could fix them. You know, what could you do to fix property taxes? Later we learned that there's been 135 attempts by the legislature to fix property taxes in the last 30 years. Well, as one person said, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me 138 times, shame on you, shame on me. Okay, it's time we stop this. And as we looked at all the different ways, maybe we could make it more bulletproof, i.e. to be manipulated to special interests, more fair, concluded you can't do it. The system just simply doesn't allow it to operate properly. So finally, one day, we came in and says, hey, let's just abolish them. There was dead silence in the room for about 5 minutes. And then people said, we can't do that. And as we began to explore it, as we began to do the economic research, as we began to look at what was going on, we realized not only can it work, it truly is the only way to deal with it. And out of that came Measure 2. Now, Measure 2, contrary to those opposing this, wasn't just some harebrained, knee-jerk idea. More than 2 years of economic research, literally tens of thousands of dollars to hire experts to do the econometric studies, the dynamic studies went into this. We then took it down to the legislature because we asked the legislature itself, would you put this on the ballot so people can consider it? In doing that, we sent it to the Legislative Council, and the Legislative Council's attorneys drafted what has become Measure 2. This was done by our state attorneys. This thing is bulletproof. This thing was well thought out, well done, and it works and it accomplishes the goals we've been talking about today.
I looked at it, from my perspective. I'm a mom. I want my children to live here in North Dakota. I want my grandchildren to have a home that they can call their own, that they can grow up in, and be a solid, steady part of this community. And I see property tax as a real disincentive. We can talk about the economics, about bringing in new businesses and so forth. When I talk about investment in the community, I'm not talking about economic investment. I'm talking about an emotional and a social investment where families are committed to their neighborhoods, where they will be able to fix up their homes and improve their neighborhoods without the threat of taxes going up even more, where they see long-term the good that they are doing to their community and they want to be a part of that, and they're not turned away because of the ever-increasing taxes.
Since we had almost 30,000 North Dakota voters signed this petition because they wanted to examine this thoroughly, because they wanted the freedom to live in their homes and not be afraid to lose them.
And if you're looking for real specific answers and detailed answers, we published a book called Property Tax Revolution that is available at empowerthetaxpayer.com, where you can get it. It's about a 100-page read, real easy. You can get through it in a couple hours, and it gives all the specific details.
Now, this was a great idea. When I heard about it, I got excited. Measure 2 would really send a powerful message to the entire country because it proves the point that taxes on property really shouldn't have never occurred.
If the measure passes, you asked me about the boy looking at the field into the sun. The sun's going to come out. It literally will come out economically as well as figuratively. We will have a bright future and a bright new day. And then we'll have other challenges, but these will be the kind of challenges that we'll embrace and that are going to make us better. It'll turn North Dakota truly in to the pioneer of the future of America.
I wish North Dakota well, let me tell you.